Since joining the border patrol, I've been having nightmares. This seemed like the only place I could talk about it. In the last one, I'm tracking somebody through the desert on a moonless night. My flashlight chases 2 pairs of footsteps until I get to a clearing. Then, the tracks end in the middle of the dirt. It doesn't make sense, but maybe the wind blew them away, or they were abducted by aliens. Or maybe it's an ambush. Unsettled, I start to head back, but then I trip on something in the dark dirt. My head hits the ground, and my flashlight flies into the brush away from me. As I try to get up, there's this resistance on my neck. I strain to lift my head, and the resistance becomes a force, a pull. Finally, I see an ashy hand tugging at my collar, and it wants me to join it in the dirt. That's when I wake up and see it's just Steve pulling at my collar. Steve's my journeyman. We're at a port of entry on the US-Mexico border, watching their live feeds all night. I must have fallen asleep. "Look alive, Dom, we got bogeys." He points at a drone video feed, and I see a man, a woman, and a child at the fence. The man cuts a hole in it, while the woman watches. The kid just sort of stares into the blackness. As I try to figure him out, he turns to the camera. Maybe it's because of the nightmare, but his blank face, quivering with black and white pixels, looks like a nest of worms to me. We hit the road, tracking the sensor hits to our bogeys. Steve's been pissed at me ever since I put in my transfer to the asylum office, and the chief gave us midnights as punishment. Finally, he breaks the silence. "You know, you'll do a lot more good out here than sitting at a desk," he says. "I know, man, I know. So why quit?" he asks. And now it's my turn to be mum. I'm not going to tell him about the nightmares and the guilt. When I told you I worked for Border Patrol, you probably imagined I was some racist white guy with a mustache. Actually, I'm Latino, so the guilt is 10 times worse. "Is this about the guy we found?" he presses. The guy is a migrant who ran out of water and drank his own piss for 5 days until his kidneys gave out. "Nah, man, it's not that. I got a girl up in Tucson and I want to be closer to her." "Should've known," he smirks. "You're a pussy for pussy." He swerves off the road and onto the dirt. We're headed straight for the border now, when the sensor hit stops moving. I rub my eyes to make sure it really wasn't moving. Midnights haven't been kind to me. My nightmares seem to blend into reality. We track it to a spot 2 miles from the border. There's a body there, collapsed in the dirt. Steve and I bolt out of the car. Flipping the body over, it looks like the guy has been mauled by an animal. Deep gashes run down from his face and chest, spilling sticky and glistening black blood onto the ground. A bloody hunting knife rests in the dirt beside him that he probably used to defend himself. "Mountain lion?" I ask Steve. He shines his light on the man's face, punctured with deep and violent stabs. "Something bigger than that," he says. Steve traces a path with his torch from the body to find 2 pairs of footprints running into the brush. A nauseating deja vu bubbles up inside of me. It looks exactly like my nightmare. Steve tries to radio, but all he gets is static. "Let's hang back and call the cavalry," he says. "There could be people hurt up there." I shoot back. I don't wait for his response. I have enough corpses on my conscience. so I drop my weapon and head into the brush. Steve follows behind. It's in there, where I can't see more than a few feet ahead of me, that I feel what it's like to be hunted. Not by an animal, but something worse. Something that puts my hair on edge. It's just karma, I think to myself. And the feeling passes as we emerge. Our flashlights chase up the footprints to converge on two figures huddled under a palo verde tree. It's a mother clutching her injured child, and thankfully they don't run as we approach. The kid looks in bad shape. His shirt is covered in blood, and he has a glassy deadness in his eyes. "Does your boy need medical attention?" I ask the terrified woman in Spanish. "No, he's fine. Just scared," she replies in English. "Do you have any weapons on you?" Steve barks. "No, nothing," she says. "Search them," he orders me. "I'm going to try and call this in." He steps away while I search and question the mom. Her name is Alma. She's from Nogales and ran away when a gang tried to kill her 11-year-old son Kwang. Examining the boy, I find the telltale bruises of a gang initiation and a tattoo peeking out from his sleeve. I hike it up a little to get a better look. It's a gothic cursive M that ends in a coiled devil's tail. I've seen it many times before. It's the sign Las Maras, the ultimate bad hombres. They're the guys who tear up their entire bodies with guns and skulls and demons. No wonder the poor kid looks like he's seen the devil. It's because he has. The boy pulls away from me and hugs his mom. "We want asylum," she implores me. "We can talk about that back at the station." I point to the brush. "Can you tell me who the dead man is over there?" "He was our coyote." "What happened to him?" Alma clams up. Finally, she says, "An animal got him." "What kind of animal?" Before she can answer, Steve returns with a bewildered look on his face. "Dom, come listen to this." He twists the dial on his radio. It sounds like static to me, so I turn it up to the max. Just above the hiss, I can hear a man whispering. His words are lispy and don't sound like anything I've heard before. His breathless delivery sends a chill down my spine. Any idea what language that is? Pima? I offer. We're not far from the Tohonores. Well, here's the only signal I can get out here. You mean you can't reach the station? Now, my chill is cresting into panic. No, Steve says gravely. Maybe someone's jamming us. The cartels have gone pretty high-tech, and we're sitting ducks out here. We both look at Alma and Kwang with renewed suspicion. I bind their wrists with pull-string handcuffs. Then we hike back to our car as fast as we can. The wind has picked up in a full howl, half covering the dead coyote in dirt. I help Alma and Kwang into the back while Steve starts the car. What about the body? I ask. Leave it for tribal police, he says while he struggles with the GPS on the dash. This fucking thing can't find us. Let me see. I fiddled with the settings. But all I get is a blank map and the message, GPS signal not found. The headlights of our vehicle beam pathetically into the darkness, so maybe we see 30 feet of dirt. Without our GPS, we might as well be on the moon. Try restarting the car, I suggest. I'll try my phone. I pull up the Maps app, and I get the same message. No signal. I even stick the phone out the window, but still nothing. Nothing on my phone either. What about you? Steve bangs on the dash in frustration. Nothing. maybe the satellite is down. GPS is the US military, so unless World War III just started, then it's not the fucking satellite. Is everything okay? Alma asks from the back. Everything's okay, I say. Then why aren't we going? We need you to be quiet, ma'am. Steve snaps. What is the problem? Are we in danger? She insists, growing anxious. We have it under control. Now, I need you to calm down, Steve orders. As they argue, I try to de-escalate the situation, but Huang seems completely numb to our conversation. He just stares ahead, past us. Suddenly, his eyes go wide. He points forward and screams. I whip my head to look out the front of our vehicle. What I see is more terrifying than any of my nightmares. I will do my best to describe it. It looks like a large tumbleweed bouncing across our headlights. But it's not a tumbleweed. It's too big, too round, and too black. Even though the light hits it dead on, it's pure black. And its outline isn't a perfect circle either. It quivers like it has hundreds of tiny hairs on it. You know, in high school biology, they would show you what a virus looks like close up. That's what it looks like, except big enough to swallow you whole. At least, that's what I think it looks like. I can only see it for a few seconds before it bounces into the darkness. Did you see that? I shout. See what? Steve asks me, scared. Just drive. The car lurches forward. As we barrel away, Alma clutches her son and whimpers a prayer in Spanish. I check behind us, but I can't see anything other than desert. My heartbeat lowers, and I can finally think clearly. Was it all in my head? Then I remember going camping with my mom. She taught me how to navigate with the stars. And seeing the stars is one of the only things I like about this job. So, we managed to follow the North Star to the road. Back at the station, I process Alma and Huang and take their fingerprints. The mysterious horror of the desert feels like a distant memory, washed away by the everyday horror of our bureaucracy. But I've been numb to that for a long time now. I bring Alma and Huang into Steve's office. They sit across from him, and I close the door. He takes a freshly printed document from his laser jet and starts a pitch I've heard 100 times before. I'm not sure you've heard about our procedure, but I want to be 100% honest with you, because the next decisions you make will have a big impact on you and your family. Now, are you comfortable with English, or do you want Agent Lopez to translate? English, Alma says, and I'm relieved. I hate this next part. Excellent. This is a temporary detention facility. In a few days, you'll be transferred to another larger facility to await trial. Your son will not be transferred with you, because we are not allowed to hold him in detention. I will allow it. She interrupts. Please let me finish everything I have to say. Steve says sharply. I will get to your choices at the end. Do you understand? Yes. As I was saying, your son will not be transferred with you. You have committed a crime against the United States, and we prosecute every case without exception. The penalties are severe if you are found guilty. You can get up to 6 months jail time, after which you and your son will be deported and barred from legally re-entering the United States. But we want to apply for asylum. Yes, you can apply, but the odds of getting it are very low. Do you remember how many people get asylum from Mexico, Agent Lopez? Between 2 and 3%. Tears start to well up in her eyes. Steve is an excellent agent, and he knows how to use my good cop vibe to break people. Now, he goes in for the kill. But there is a way to avoid all this, he says as he pushes forward a document with all the grace of a Vegas magician. It basically says you volunteer to leave the United States. You sign this, and we take you to a hotel tonight and put you on a plane tomorrow. You won't have anything on your record, and you can still apply for asylum legally at a port of entry. We tried in Nogales, but they sent us back. We're working through the backlog as fast as we can. It won't be any better here. She pushes the contract back. We can't go back. They will kill my son. Steve maintains his smile, but now it has a sardonic hint. You're very tired. Take a night to sleep on it, and you can tell me your final decision in the morning. He nods to me. Agent Lopez will take you to your cell. I escort them down a hallway filled with cells. They're all packed with migrants, but the last one only houses one other middle-aged woman, Maria. Even though it's 2 a.m., she's still up. We found her in the desert a few days ago, trying to bury her husband's body. They came all the way from Guatemala and couldn't keep up with their coyote, so he cut them loose. Her husband gave her the last of their water, but then she couldn't bear to leave him when he died. Now, she sits on the bench and prays quietly on the rosary. I was raised Catholic. The desert convinced me there's no God out here, but I'm not so sure about the devil. I hand Alma a pair of mylar blankets for their bedding and open the cell. Juan refuses to go in. He doesn't say anything and just plants himself firmly into the concrete floor. Alma argues with him, then pushes him with all her might. But he doesn't budge. He just stares at Maria as she utters, "El Señor es mi pastor, nada me faltará. En lugares de verdes pastos me hace descansar." And that's when Juan starts to hiss. Maria stops her prayer and turns around, white in the face. Her sudden silence suits him, but Alma isn't relieved. Fear creeps into her eyes as she escorts him inside. I help Alma make a bed for Juan, then I close the cell. On the other side of the bars, she talks to me in Spanish. "Do you like what you do?" Her question catches me off guard. So, I answer honestly, "No." "Then, why do you do it?" "Because my mom's sick. She has cancer. This is the best job for Miles." "I see." "Do you think I'm a monster?" I blurt out. "It doesn't matter," she says. "I commit a crime because my son will die. And you commit a crime because your mother will die. There is no real choice when your family is in danger." I turn to leave, unable to bear any more shame in front of her. But she calls to me again. "But I have a choice. Should I take the deal?" I freeze. This isn't in Steve's script. I already feel so much guilt for my decisions that the weight of others will crush me. "Forget it." Her eyes sink to the ground, and she turns to rejoin her son. I watch her crawl into her mylar blanket and close her eyes as Maria starts to pray again. Juan lies on the ground, but doesn't sleep. He just glares at Maria with a snake-like hatred in his eyes. A part of me wonders if he'll hiss again, or do something worse. I get home around 4 a.m., pop some Ambien, and get into bed. It's hard to fall asleep. There's another dead body seared into my memory. This one disemboweled by a black sphere of death. But then, I feel a delicious buzz flood my brain. My mind finally stops racing. I can close my eyes. And that's when I hear it. A hiss. It's coming from under the bed. At first, I don't think it's real. I'm dreaming, and like a dream, I'm not in control of my own body. I hang my head over the bed to look underneath. Down there, something slithers in the darkness. Hissing again. It sounds just like one. So now I know I must be dreaming. The black, quivering mass moves towards me, and suddenly I'm face to face with a snake. It bares its fangs, and it takes every survival instinct in my brainstem to pull me away from its bite. I watch the snake slither out from under my bed. It silently moves across the room, through the open screen door, to the outside. Here's the part that terrifies me. I can't tell the difference between my nightmares and my life anymore. My next shift starts on a high note. Midnights suck all the energy and purpose out of you. But tonight, I race to work because I have a radical idea on how to cure my nightmares. And it's not Ambien or alcohol. The only way I can ease my guilt is to start doing things I can be proud of. So I march straight to Alma's cell and tell her not to take our deal. Her reaction isn't what I'm expecting. Is this another trick? She asks suspiciously. Look, asylum isn't as impossible as my partner made it out to be. I keep my voice down so Maria from Guatemala can't hear me. It's only 9 p.m, but she's already asleep at the end of the cell. Juan has crumbled up his crackers and now lines up the pieces on the floor. They surround Maria like a border, separating her from the rest of the room. He hums some children's tune that gives me chill. I think you could have a case with Juan. He's been through a lot. But your partner said he would separate us if we applied. That's not necessarily the case. So there's no chance you would take my son away? His humming gets louder and louder behind her. I can't say for sure. Alma grows angry. How can you say you're the law here if you don't even know the rules? The rules change week to week, I say, too loudly, and Maria stirs. Truth is, it depends on who's processing your case and who's the supervisor. I'm training to be an asylum officer, and I can tell you there's space for interpretation. And Alma? Yes? Please don't tell anyone I spoke about this with you. As she chews over my words, a deep chuckle interrupts us from the back of the cell. It's Maria. Her body quivers as she rolls over to face us. But her head stays locked to the wall, so I can't see her face. Her arm seizes upwards with its wrist bent at an unnatural angle, and poor Juan scurries back towards us. Suddenly, her giggling stops, and we all stare at her in silent terror. That's when Maria's head whips around to face us. The vessels in her eyes have burst, and she leers at us with blood-red rage. Alma screams as Maria breaks into a full seizure. I struggle to get the cell door open while her legs and arms fly in every direction, scattering Juan's crackers all over the floor. Stay back! I shout as I try to keep Maria from the wall. Up close, I can see deep red lesions mark her face and arms. Her flying leg pushes me back, and she slips out of my arms. With a final forceful twitch, her head snaps into the wall. She's dead. I spend the rest of my shift talking to the CDC. It feels like something out of a zombie movie. Men in hazmat suits come and quarantine the cell and keep us in isolation. It's not a new feeling for me. This place is mostly a prison after all. But this time, I'm on the other side of the bars. Steve and the other agents look at me now like I'm the interloper, bringing strange disease and danger from distant shores into their lives. I sit in silence with Alma, Juan, and Maria's dead body while the CDC makes their assessment. Juan doesn't seem too bothered. I catch him playing with Maria's stiff fingers. He whispers to her as if she was a doll. And I swear, I see her lips twitch. Was she settling into rigor mortis? Or was she whispering back? Finally, as the sun rises, The CDC clears us all for release. They think Maria got dengue fever from a mosquito on her way over the border, and her symptoms were interpreted as other signs of dehydration and heat stroke. Dengue is not contagious, but it's possible that she was bit by other mosquitoes in our facility that could transfer it to others. They tell us to report any signs of fever in ourselves, our co-workers, or our detainees. Then, they pack up Maria's body and leave. Before I clock out, the chief calls me into his office. Steve's there, and they both still look at me like I'm not one of them anymore. "How are you feeling?" the chief asks. He's first-generation Mexican-American like my mom, in case you guys thought that only white people were the problem here. When it comes to the border, we're all complicit. Midnights have been rough. It was your decision to leave us. So, what were you doing in Alma's cell last night? He asks, and I stiffen up. She wanted to talk about Maria. And you didn't talk about anything else? Nope. And why didn't she tell anyone on the afternoon shift? Why did she wait to tell you? I don't know, I say, and the chief raises his eyebrows incredulously. I had to give him more. It's possible she trusts me more. I think Agent Johnson's interrogation shook her up a little bit. That's bullshit. Steve erupts from the corner of the room. The chief raises his arm to silence Steve. It's funny you mentioned that, because Alma informed us today that she wants to apply for asylum. She was about to sign. He must have talked to her. Steve presses. I did not. I want to think that's the case, Agent Lopez. I gave USCIS my full recommendation for your transfer, and I hope I didn't make a mistake. You didn't. Then, I need you to demonstrate that to me. I want you to conduct their asylum interview here. What? I ask, surprised. Why me? The asylum office is backed up with interviews for a month, and because of last night's excitement, ICE refuses to take Alma or Juan until they get a full CDC report. Who knows when that'll be? So, it's our problem, and we just aren't equipped to keep them long term. They need to be out of here ASAP, but as long as they have a pending asylum claim, we can't deport them. He leans in and grins at me. And that's where you come in, to solve the problem. Before the interview, I try to grab a couple hours sleep in an empty conference room. The blinds can keep out the light completely, so I struggle to fall asleep in my office chair. My heavy eyes wander around until they land in the darkness corner of the room, a place where even the intense Sonoran sun can't reach. And there's someone in the corner, staring at me. He takes a step forward out of the blackness, and I see he's naked with dark and cracked skin like beef jerky. His eyes are clouded white, and at first, I don't recognize this man. Until he opens his mouth, and a waterfall of urine falls from it onto the carpet. Now I remember him. He drank his own urine for 5 days until we found him. A knock on the door wakes me up. The room's empty, and I spring up and open the blinds just to be sure. There's no one there, but a large wet spot stains the carpet where the man was standing. I sniff, and it smells like piss. Real strong. The knock on the door gets louder, so I don't have time to investigate. I open the door, and a junior agent enters with Alma and Juan. Do you smell anything? I ask him. Like what? I don't know, something bad. They all look at me like I'm crazy. Never mind, probably something from outside. You can close the door. He leaves. I set up Juan with some crayons and paper, and Alma takes a seat across from me. So, you're doing our asylum application? She asks, relieved. Yes. I turn on a video camera behind me. Please be aware that this interview is being recorded. Okay, she says, struck by my sudden formality. The purpose of this interview is to establish your credible fear of persecution or torture. It is important that you tell the truth. Everything you say will be available to an immigration judge if your asylum claim goes forward. Do you understand? Yes. Okay, good. So, what do you think will happen to you if you return home? They will kill my son. Who? Las Maras Salvatruchas. It's a bad gang. And why do they want to kill him? He was in a rival gang. Which one? I interrupt her. Los Aztecas, she answers, and I scribble down the information in my notepad. It's not starting well. To get asylum, your persecution must be based on one of 5 reasons: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or social group. Being in a gang isn't one of them. But it wasn't his choice. He was forced to join them, she adds, pleadingly. Okay. I add another note. How do you know they're going to kill him? I saw it. You were there. They kidnapped him, but I found out from a neighbor where they went. So I got a gun from a contrabandista and I went to rescue him. Her throat stiffens as she continues. They had him tied up on the ground, and one was going to cut him open with a knife. I screamed at them to stop. When they saw I had a gun, they let us go. I finish scribbling notes on her incredible story. Maybe too incredible. How many Maras were in there with Juan? I ask. 4. And they didn't have weapons? One had a knife, the one that was going to cut Juan. So what were the other 3 doing? I'm not sure. Where were they in the room? On the ground. Doing what? I don't know. So this is a gang safe house, but nobody has guns, and most of the crew is taking a nap. You'll never believe me if I tell you, she shouts and breaks into tears. It's devastating to know I brought her to this point, and I'm just glad the camera can't see the guilt on my face. Behind her on the floor, Juan pauses his furious drawing and stares at his weeping mother. I push a box of tissues to her. Thank you, she manages. I know how you feel. I've seen some terrible things out there, things that normal people wouldn't believe. But we're not normal people, are we? We're border people. We live in the space between normal. She dabs her eyes and composes herself. Then, I ask again. What were the Maras doing when you found Juan? They were praying. Praying? To Satan, she says quietly, as if the words themselves were dangerous. I suddenly feel sick to the pit of my stomach. Not because I believe her, but because poor Alma just torpedoed any chance she and Juan had of staying here. I think that's all I need, Alma. You don't believe me, she says, panicked. I go to turn off the camera before she makes herself sound crazier. They were chanting in Latin. They were going to cut him open. I want to believe you, but I have to review the evidence. I open the door and tell the junior agent that he can take them back to the cell. Alma pulls Juan up, scattering his drawings on the floor. You have to believe me. We can't go back, she pleads as the agent escorts them outside. I don't have the heart to respond. I stand in the room for a while, listening to their steps disappear in the hall. Then, when the silence becomes overwhelming, I start to tidy up the room. Eventually, I pick up Juan's pictures off the ground. In the first, Juan has drawn a child in the center of a red pentagram with heavy crayon strokes. 3 black blobs surround it, and another lords over it like a shadow that sharpens into a knife point. But this is the stuff you see in horror movies all the time, I tell myself. This is something Alma could have taught him to do for a gullible border agent. But for the next picture, I have no explanation. I can only describe it as the face of a yellow man who spits an arm out of his mouth and wears a crown of feathers. The drawing is crude, but not like a child would make. It's crude in an ancient way, like an Aztec painting or the wall of an Egyptian tomb. Something deep in my gut says that Juan didn't draw this. It feels older than this building, older than the border. It feels like it was always here. The sun sets outside my office, and I've officially been up for 24 hours. I try my best with the report, but there aren't too many ways to spin a satanic gang ritual into grounds for asylum. The best I can do is suggest that it could be a type of religious persecution, if it is true. There's no evidence to back up Alma's story, so I have no choice but to reject her application. Well, almost no evidence. Juan's yellow demon glares at me from their open file on my desk. His crayon skin shimmers under the fading light. I decide to sleep on the final decision, so I turn off my computer screen. There, in the blackness of the LCD, I see my own reflection. But there's something behind me. A towering yellow man with a crown of feathers raises a scepter above my head. It is a severed arm, and I know it's really there, because I can feel its finger tickle my hair. I spin around, and the room is empty. I march through the hall to the lobby, paranoid that some new nightmare will rob me of my desperately needed sleep. And that's when I hear it. A scream. A scream comes from the detention beds. I freeze in place, worried that maybe no one hears it but me. To my dark relief, a junior agent runs down the hall and I follow him. Another scream pierces the air, and this one I recognize. It's Alma. We stop at her cell as she cries out for help. She cradles Juan in her arms, his skin damp in a sickly yellow color, and calls out for help. As soon as I think I escaped midnight, they suck me back in. Alma, Juan and I race down Route 86 in the dead of night. It's a narrow unlit highway through the heart of Indian country, and my high beams barely penetrate 100 feet ahead of me. It doesn't help that every pothole rocks my suspension like a cradle. My eyes are getting heavy, and the car starts to drift to the right. Even at 100 miles per hour, my adrenaline doesn't kick in. My reserves are shot. I need to sleep too bad. Then my chin hits my chest, and my eyes bolt open. I suddenly swerve the car to the left, and Alma shouts from the backseat. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah." "How much further?" "Another half hour." "It's too long. He's burning up," she yells, clutching Juan on her lap. I'm afraid that Juan got dengue. The brass ordered me to rush him to the nearest hospital. Nearest means an hour away in Tucson, but I don't dare go faster. Drunk Indians sometimes wander on the road at night and fall asleep. Steve hit one once, and since then we call it Death's Highway. "You have to go faster. He's dying." Alma screams in my ear. Okay. I hit the gas, crawling up to 110, then 115 miles per hour. The brush on either side of the road blurs into glowing yellow lines. That's when it happens. Something black and shaggy crosses the road ahead of me. I have no time to react and hit it with full force. It must be pretty big, because the impact sends it up into my windshield and over my vehicle. The sheer terror of the moment hits me and Alma at the same time. She finally screams, and I have the sense to slam on the brakes. The steering wheel shakes my hand like an earthquake as we screech to a stop. "Oh, Dios mío," she mutters, and then continues into an unintelligible string of desperate prayers. Juan starts to moan, and her prayers get louder, more desperate. "Is everyone okay?" I ask. "No," Alma cries between Juan's gasps. My shock gives way to more practical fears. Did I just kill someone? There's only one way to find out. I shift the car in reverse and turn around. Juan is drenched in sweat and wheezes after every breath. "What are you doing?" Alma yells at me as we barrel backwards down the road. "We must go the other way." I ignore her, and she works herself into a frenzy. "He is dying. Please, please go the other way. I might have hit someone." "So? They're already dead. My son is alive," she wails. Then I see it. A large black lump on the side of the road, bathed in the red of my taillights. I hit the brakes. Don't want to hit it, or dim again. "Stay here." I launch out of the patrol car and slam the door behind me. It's pure black outside, except for the lights on my running vehicle. I turn on my flashlight and rush to the animal lump on the road. Thank God, I didn't hit a person. It's some kind of giant coyote, bigger than any I've ever seen in the desert. The impact twisted his spine 180 degrees, so his hind legs face one direction and his front legs face another. Exposed bone pops out of his shoulder, and blood covers his coat. But that's not the most horrible thing. My flashlight lands on his stomach, and I see a shallow breath. I guide the beam up to his face. The poor beast isn't dead. His glassy eye stares at the light. No, not at me. And I don't see pain there. I see pure hate. I swear he even snarls at me. Behind me, I hear Alma banging on the window. There's time for one final mercy I can give this animal. I take out my firearm and shoot him clean through the skull. The shot wakes up a dormant sense of duty in me, and I run back to the patrol car. Opening the trunk, Alma's shouting momentarily breaks the stillness of the desert. But there's something I need to do first. I grab a road flare, slam the trunk shut, and hustle back to the animal. He's so big that some unsuspecting driver could flip his car over the body. Popping the flare, I set it next to the coyote. Its red flame flickers in his dead eyes. Back in the car, I blast down the road with new focus. "How's your boy doing?" I ask Alma. "Really hot. We'll be at St. Mary soon. It's a very good hospital. My mom is there." I look in the rearview mirror to see if my words bring Alma some comfort. What I find almost sends me off the road again. It's the wolf. He sits up on the road, a large black silhouette against the burning red flare. I turn back to the road and hit the gas. We crawl up to 110. Drunk Indians be damned. When we arrive at the emergency entrance of St. Mary's, 2 orderlies with a stretcher and a nurse are already waiting for us. They burst into action, lifting Juan's body onto the stretcher and rushing him inside. Alma and I follow close behind, when suddenly, Juan has a fit. He lunges up and attempts to jump out of the stretcher. The orderlies try to push him down, but he bites Juan so deep that he staggers back. Juan nearly gets away when I hurry in to help. I hold his shoulders down on the stretcher while an orderly gets his feet. With unnatural strength, Juan frees one of his arms from my grasp. I try to get him under control, but it's hard to get a grip on his sweaty skin. Even Alma races to grab his free arm, but he knocks her across the face. Then he claws his nail into my neck, and I shout bloody murder. Banishing the pain, I bear all my weight down on his arm and slowly push it down to the stretcher until we're face to face. There's an animal hatred in his eyes. The same hate I saw in the wolf. Before Juan can free himself again, The other orderly runs back with a sedative. He hammers it into Juan's thigh, and I immediately feel him slacken. The orderlies and the nurse continue to push him into the ER. Alma chases after them, but hospital security stops her. She knocks them back with almost as much tenacity as her son, and I have to grab her in a big bear hug. She resists at first, then breaks down into tears in my armpit. This sudden intimacy makes me feel uncomfortable. My professional instinct tells me to push away, but my humanity draws her closer. As I hold Alma, my gaze drifts above the entrance to the hallway. There's an icon of Mary cradling the baby Jesus, and I can't help but think of the crazy story she told me. It's just a dengue, right? Or could something worse have a hold of Juan? I reject the thought outright. All these insomnia-induced hallucinations have affected my judgment. My own guilty conscience has always been fodder for my nightmares. But Alma's stories of satanic gangs, Maria's fitful death, and memories of Steve's human roadkill have pushed my demons out of my subconscious and into the waking world. Even now, as a nurse takes us to Juan's room, they walk among me. We go under those horrible buzzing hospital lights, and the one at the end of the hall is broken. Beneath its flickering light, I see a patient I recognize. He's a young Indian guy with a black ponytail and cool retro cowboy boots. He turns to us, and I see his torso is impossibly smashed. The black tread of a truck runs across it, and his intestines spill out the bottom like a popped zit. We turn into the room before he can wave at me. Inside, Juan sleeps in the hospital bed with an IV attached to his arm. The sickly yellow color in his skin is gone, and his doctor tells us that his fever is under control. They've ruled out dengue. So, what's wrong with him? Alma asks, still on edge. We're not 100% sure. Could be an infection, so we have him on antibiotics. We'd like to keep him under observation for the night. The doc turns to me with a look of disdain. I assume that's alright? Of course, I answer. Alma peppers him with questions until I interrupt. I'll be back soon. Don't go anywhere, okay? She nods, and I slip out. There's one thing I have to do before I sleep. I open the door to my mom's hospital room. She lies upright in the bed, a mess of tubes and wires connected to her nose, vein and finger. When her lung cancer metastasized to her brain, they needed very aggressive treatment to get it under control. They warns me her brain function may have changed, whatever that means. Doctors love their euphemisms. They think it helps, but really, it just makes you imagine the worst. I dread the moment my fears become reality, so I watch her for a while. On her bedstand, I recognize her large brass cross from home and her little icons of the Virgen de Guadalupe. I've never been a religious person like my mom, but I'm not going to lie. That stuff on her table makes me feel something. I see how chemo's taking all my mom's hair, and how she can barely breathe with that tube in her nose. In that moment, God exists for me. He exists enough to tell him fuck you. Just then, my mom's eyes open. Santi, she says. Santiago, my father who died 20 years ago when I was 10. No, Mom, it's me, Dominic. Of course, Dominic. She squints, then smiles at me. I'm not sure who she sees right now, but I don't think it matters. How are you doing? I ask. I'm okay, but you look horrible. Thanks, Mom. I laugh. Just a long day at work, I guess. Trouble at the shop? She asks, and my heart sinks again. She must be talking about my dad. He worked as a mechanic. Really, Mom, it's okay. I'm fine. Tell me what's wrong. She insists. Listening to someone else's problems helps me forget about my own. Her smile gives way to a coughing fit, and I can't say no. She's a border person too now, like me and Alma, on the boundary of life and death, sense and nonsense. Who else can I talk about these things with? Okay, so I picked up this woman and her son trying to cross the border the other day. The mom wants asylum because she's afraid gangs are going to kill her kid if they go back. And it's true. The kid's pretty shaken up. He's got these crazy bruises all over him and won't say a word. So you must help them. I want to, but then the mom starts telling me this crazy story. She says a gang back in Mexico tried to sacrifice a kid to Satan. Like, they tied him to the ground and chanted satanic prayers before they cut him open. Luckily, she came just in time to rescue him. I stopped mid-sentence. My mom's eyes are wide, and her heart rate has jumped on her monitor. You okay, Mom? Yes, I'm fine. She puts her hand to her chest. Hey, don't let this story upset you. It's not a story. Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's lying intentionally. It's like PTSD or something. No, she insists and grabs my hand. You must believe her. You're scaring me, Ma. What's on your mind? You'll think I'm crazy. You already think I'm crazy. I don't think you're crazy. I fib because I don't want to shut down her moment of lucidity. How many more moments like this does she have left? I'm listening. Okay, it was before we moved. Back when I was still a cop. She smiles and starts to tell me this story. I was responding to a 911 call about screams coming from an abandoned building. We knew the place well. Some gang had moved in there and turned it into a safe house. When I got there, I remember there was this horrible wind. You've never felt the wind this bad. I was trying to get to the house, and it was blowing against me like it wanted me to stay away. The neighbors were outside, yelling and wailing. There's someone inside. They kept shouting at me, so I couldn't call for backup. I had to go in myself. Then this weird thing happens. I try to open the door, and the wind changed direction. Now it was blowing the other way to keep the door shut. I had to put my foot against the frame to pry the door open. And I remember, then it flew back with such an angry snap against the wall. I took my first step into the room, and the wind suddenly stopped. All of a sudden, this horrible smell hit me. The lights didn't work, so I ran my flashlight around the room. There were gang signs tacked all over the walls. I had my gun out, but I was so scared that the beam was shaking. I had just gotten my own patrol, and I had forgotten the first rule of being a cop. Do you know what it is? No, I tell her. Always follow your nose. I looked down, and I finally saw it. There was a kid. A crip, I think, 17 or 18. And he was cut all the way open from his chin down to his groin on a bed of cinder blocks. It's funny, but I don't remember screaming. I was too curious, I guess. I had never seen the inside of a man before. Then I felt something wet hit me on the head. I looked up with my flashlight, and I could see the ceiling was dripping blood. They used this blood to draw a pentagram up there. You know what a pentagram is? Yeah, Mom, I know. It's the mark of the devil. But that's not why I believe the story you told me. Lots of gang back then did stuff with the devil. This was different. How was it different? She shrinks at the memory. I found the knife they did it with, and when I tried to pack it into evidence, I heard a voice. It was whispering to me. Do you want to know what it said? A shiver goes down my spine. I'm not so sure lucidity was a good idea anymore. What did it say? My mom draws me close. She whispers something to me. Something I don't understand. But I've heard it before. It was on the radio in the desert, back when we found Juan. As she pulls away, I can feel my world go into a tailspin. A rapid beep brings me back to reality. It's my mom's heart monitor. She's spiking. Mom, you okay? She leans deeper into her pillows and looks up at the ceiling. He's here now, she says breathlessly. The beeping doesn't let up. Worried, I step out and call a nurse. She grabs an attending physician and they kick me out of the room without saying more. There's nothing left for me to do but wait. At sunrise, a priest comes to my mom's room. He introduces himself as Father Casey. Putting a plain white vestment, he asks me and the nurse to join him around my mother, who lays unconscious on the bed in a red wool hat. She's been this way the whole night, and the doctors say there's nothing more they can do. Her advance directive only had 2 requests: no life support, and call this priest. I'm sorry to rush you, he says, but this sacrament must be delivered while your mother is alive. The nurse nods while I can only stand awkwardly in the back. The priest lays his hand on my mom's forehead. He's tall and old, with these crazy blue eyes that feel familiar to me. After blessing her, he stands upright and opens a small flask of yellow oil. He places a dollop of it on her forehead, then on her palms. As its smell of cinnamon and pine hits me, he starts a prayer. Through this holy anointing, may the Lord in His love and mercy help you with the grace of the Holy Spirit. The nurse closes her eyes, but I stare blankly at the scene. Even though it's all bullshit, it gives me some comfort to know this will be my last memory of my mom alive. It's better than our last conversation. He continues. May the Lord, who frees you from sin, save you and raise you up. Free her from the memories of disemboweled gangbangers and pentagrams drawn in blood. I grant you full pardon and the remission of all your sins. Thoughts that were probably all bullshit like this. Random brain cells firing in her dying mind. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And that's when I notice a red stain on my mom's clean white blanket. Amen, the nurse repeats. And I see another red stain on my mom's shirt. There's no way it was there before. Does anyone want to offer a prayer? Father Casey asks. Before I can answer, I feel something wet fall on my forehead. It slides down my face, and I catch it with my hand. The priest and nurse stare at me in shock. Rubbing the wetness between my fingers, I open them up to see what fell on me. It's blood. I feel another drop hit my forehead. That's when it dawns on me. My mom said the pentagram was drawn in blood on the ceiling. I look up and realize this isn't just in my head. A large red puddle had spread across the white ceiling. Is this it? Is this the moment my nightmares have entered reality? Another drop hits me in the face. All I can do is yell. Outside the room, I'm only half listening to the hospital administrator's apologies. My mom just died, so the fact that it was raining blood is a footnote to a bigger tragedy. Apparently, a special refrigerator leaked upstairs. The mention of blood makes me rub my face. I feel like it's still on my skin. The priest is staring at me too. I never liked priests. My brief experience with religion ended when I was 8. I don't remember much from when I was a kid, but I remember being horribly bored at Sunday school and goofing off all the time. One day, the priest called my mom to say, Dominic will go to hell if he doesn't clean up his act. My mom never let me go back after that. Threatening her only son with eternal damnation was too dry a Jesus cracker to swallow, even for her. But after everything I've seen these past few days, I wonder if that priest was right. I waved the administrator away and hit down the hall to check on Alma and Juan. On my way, Father Casey catches up to me. I'm sorry about your mother. She was a very special person. Thanks. I sigh. I'm glad I got to see her off to the next life. And I'm glad I get to see you in this one. You don't remember me? No, I'm sorry. That's alright. Last time I saw you, you were this big. He measures up to about his waist. It was your father's funeral. We did it at my church. I stop and study him. His face brings a flood of painful memories. Sorry, one dead parent is about all I can deal with right now. Of course, he says. I'm staying in town until your mother's funeral. Do you want to get coffee or... I'm actually on the clock right now, believe it or not. I tap the patch on my uniform. Oh, and I'm not based in Tucson. They've got me further west, deeper in the desert. So, you know. Well, let me give you my number in case you find some time. He scribbles it down in a leather appointment book and tears the page out for me. Sounds good. Take care of yourself, Dominic. I will, I say, and he walks away. Hurrying through the building, I finally get to Alma and Juan's room. It's 9 AM and I need to get them back to the station ASAP. I don't expect what's inside. The blinds are drawn, and Juan bursts with energy, jumping up and down on his bed. He waves a small wand that's about the size of a carrot. He's naked except for 2 pairs of underwear. One that he wears on his body, and other that he wears on his head as a wizard's cap. But the boldest part of his costume is his face paint. A solid black band runs from temple to temple across his eyes. With a flick of his wrist, he shouts, "Nokomichik," some gibberish spell, and directs his wand into a dark corner of the room. Someone's having a good time, I say. "Nocenti," he yells with another flourish. My smile disappears when I see Alma. She huddles in the far end of the room, staring at the corner where Juan aims his spells. "Alma?" She turns to me, dead-eyed and pale-faced. "Juan's doing much better," I offer. "Yes, he's doing good," she says, unconvinced. How is your mother?" "She died overnight." I'm very sorry. At least you were with her." "Yeah." I clear my throat. "We should get going." "Nimitskitis," Juan interrupts me with another spell, and Alma's eyes dart back to the corner. Now, it's starting to creep me out. The springs of Juan's bed give the whole thing a sinister rhythm. "Are you guys playing some kind of game?" "What?" Alma asks, confused. "What game?" "With Juan, I mean. What are you looking at?" "Nothing." I examine the corner. There's nothing there besides an empty space at the intersection of 2 beige walls. A corner. But Alma stares at me in fear. Her eyes flit between me and something else just to my right. "Please, don't stand there," she says meekly. "Tell me what's wrong." "Nothing. Just move away. I beg you." "Why?" Before I can answer, Juan interrupts us again. "Niwawai." I really studied the empty walls this time. The texture of the surface, the hazy shadows of the blinds. But I see nothing. There is a slight shiver down my back. That's it. It works its way up around my neck. Then suddenly, Alma screams. Lunging forward like a viper, she grabs hold of my near arm and pulls me away with such force that we both collapse on the floor. She tries to pull me further up with her, but I jerk away. What is going on? There's a man in the corner, Alma says with crazy eyes. He was there all night. What man? I turn around and see nothing. Ka, ho tiki ka, kilike. Juan invokes, and his mother screams again. Something's really gotten under her skin. Dime que ves. Tell me what you see, I say as I sit down next to her. She peeks beyond my shoulder to the corner. I see a man I killed. You don't see him? He is young and has no hair. He has tattoos all over his face and his skin is painted blue. I turn around, knowing full well there's no one here. Alma, you're hallucinating. No, he's come back for me. This happens to me sometimes. I see things that aren't there because I feel bad. Shifting my body to block her view of the corner, I give her my best comforting smile. Then I hear, Nimoke kelowatsin. And the door creaks open behind me. I turn around and see no one, but panic grips Alma's eyes again. There's someone new, she tells me. It's just you, me and Juan, I say as he giggles and jumps on the bed. What does your mom look like? Her question immediately tenses me up. Alma stares past my shoulder into the room. Does she have brown eyes? She asks. Anyone could have guessed that. Does she wear a hat on her head? I mean, she's a cancer patient. Is it red? How do you know that? I snap without thinking. Don't turn around. Alma pleads. My mom's death hadn't really hit me until now. My last moments with her were stolen by her violent memories and then a freak hospital accident. I feel a strong shiver across my back. Could this be something real, or just a long overdue emotional breakdown? If I submit to the insanity that she's behind me, will I ever come back? Don't, Alma says again. I can't. I have to look. Turning around, I see something more horrible than my dead mom. Juan points a severed human finger right in my face. I bat it out of my hand and it rolls on the floor. What I thought was Juan's wand is actually a woman's index finger that looks recently thawed. Shrieking, Juan runs to grab it, but Alma gets there before he does. She rushes to the open window and he jumps on her back to stop her. Give it back, you bitch! He shouts in Spanish and claws his nails into her head. I manage to pull him off her, but not before he tears out a clump of her hair. She opens the window and tosses the finger outside. Alma and I walk outside the hospital. They gave Juan another sedative, and I thought Alma could use the fresh air before I take her back to the station. What I mean is, before I take her back to a cell. Getting to midday, it's already hot, so we stick to the edge of the parking lot that's covered in trees. I can tell she's got a lot on her mind. We walk in silence until she finally breaks it. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you about the man I killed. That's okay. I was afraid that if you knew it, it would be harder for me to stay. Don't tell me any of this, Alma. I have to add it all to my report. Oh, I have no hope anymore, she says, resigned. I know we'll be sent back, sooner or later. It kills me to hear her say it. But she's right. But I want you to know something. What's that? Everything else I told you is the complete truth. And I only shot that man because they didn't believe I could shoot anybody. They wouldn't give me Juan back until I showed them. Wait, I interrupt her. You killed one of the Maras? Yes. Her lip quivers. I stop and look at her under the trees of the hospital parking lot. She's my age and grew up less than 100 miles from where I grew up. But our futures couldn't be more different. I can quit this job and reboot my life. 30 is the new 20, right? And do anything. Take out a loan and go to law school, or fuck it all and teach whitewater rafting on the Colorado River. But Alma's life is over. She shot a Mara. She signed her death warrant, and there's nowhere south of the Rio Grande she can hide. I don't know what to say. It's the best I can manage. I'm devastated. She reaches out and takes my arm. It's not your fault. You're a good man. No, I'm not. You are. The way you look after your mom. The way you try and help me and my son. I'm not a good man. But I'm trying to be a better one. In the window, I see a thin naked man staring at me. He's too far away to know for sure. But I think I recognize him. Do you see a man looking at us in the window up there? No? Alma says. So who am I to judge you for the man you killed? You saw one ghost in there. Well, let me tell you. I have a head full of them. And I don't want you and Juan to join them. But is there anything to do? I rack my brain. There must be a way to twist or embellish the evidence so they can stay. But even with my positive decision, they still will go in front of a judge. That's a gut test at the end of the day. No one's gut will believe they're victims of a satanic ritual. And that's when an idea hits me. A completely crazy idea. Reaching into my pocket, I pull out the ripped pieces of paper Father Casey gave me. I think there's a way you and Juan can stay. It won't be easy, but I want to try. Really? Yeah. Out of the blue, she throws her arms around me and kisses me on the cheek. Thank you, Dom. I watched the dead man in the window judging me. It's time to stop running from my ghosts. Last night was a new evolution of my nightmares. It started with a common theme. I was in the desert on a moonless night. Armed men led me, Alma and Juan into a box canyon. Our arms were bound together, and our captors pulled us deeper and deeper into the gorge. From the back, I couldn't see anyone's face. I tried to tug against my binds, but the pull was too strong, like I was caught in a tide. Even the canyon walls felt like two giant waves hanging over me. As my eyes drifted down, I realized their smoothness was an illusion. Little holes had been bored into the rock. And inside the holes, I saw faces. They were the cold, dead faces of everyone I've ever heard. The Ashen migrant who drank his own piss, and the Indian whose guts were squeezed out of his mouth. Even my mother was there. Her face twisted up in terror like the day she died. After I bring Alma and Juan back to detention at the station, I try calling every pro bono immigration lawyer I can find. Maybe someone can take their asylum case. Most are swamped, and the few that listen stop me at satanic gang ritual. They think I'm trying to entrap them in something, or embarrass them, or they don't want to waste the time on a hopeless cause. I get it. They can help someone with a real shot at staying here instead of chasing fairy tales. That leaves me with no choice, except my plan. It's a stupid crazy plan that might not even work and will definitely get me fired. But it's the only hope they have, and it's the only hope I'll have to ever sleep again. The first step is getting Father Casey on board. We meet in Aho, a tiny town near the station where a lot of us BP live. I suggest the grill, but he wants to see the Immaculate Conception Church in the main square. It's definitely the prettiest part of town. The Spanish-style architecture has these crazy pure white walls that glow like hot coals in the Sonoran sunset. They're glowing again when I finally get off of work to meet him. Inside, it's empty and plain. A gold cross hangs above the modest altar, small icons hang on the walls, and a little lady sits in the pews alone. Father Casey chats with the priest when he sees me. After a quick goodbye, he meets me in the center aisle. "Have you been here before?" he asks. "No," I say. "Well, I have to show you the most amazing thing." He leads me back into the pews and points high up at the wall. The powerful light of the sunset glows through a stained glass window of the Virgin Mary. Like the church, she's plainly rendered with large shards of glass. One single featureless piece for her face, and two trapezoids for her arms in prayer. But Father Casey is right. The sunset streams through the shards, creating a shower of colored light. It is kind of amazing. I bet most people don't think to look up. The father says. The world would be a better place if they did. Probably, I tell him. Thanks for meeting me here. Thank you for calling me back. It's been so long, he says as we walk around the church and look at the icons. Yeah, but I gotta tell you that I didn't call to catch up. Oh. It's about an asylum case I have. I could use your help with something. Of course, he says earnestly. I once accompanied a lawyer to the center in Adelanto. You know the one? Unfortunately, this isn't a case for lawyers. He frowns, and I continue. There's a complication, and that's why I need your help. Tell me about the complication. A few days ago, I picked up a woman and her 11-year-old son trying to cross the border. She says she's afraid to go home and wants asylum. The reason she's scared is the problem. It's because a gang, they want to sacrifice her son to Satan. You're serious? Yes, and no lawyer or judge will ever believe it. Though, this might be a blessing in disguise. See, gang violence doesn't work for asylum anyway, but religion persecution does. If I can prove there was a real satanic attack on this boy, I can approve their application. That's where you come in. You want me to say this boy is possessed? I don't know, that's what his mom thinks. Because most people who claim to be possessed are suffering from genuine psychological problems. And I'm sure this boy has no lack of trauma from gangs, from the border, and whatever you people have put him through. I know. He doesn't need a priest. He needs a doctor. The force of Father Casey's words shake the quiet of the church. Look, I don't make the rules. I know this kid has been through hell, and not the literal one, but we don't protect people for that. And trust me, no one feels shittier about it than I do. I take a deep breath and give my final pitch. I'm no expert in the faith I was born into, but my understanding is that we think evil exists. A more fundamental evil. Call it demons or Satan, but it's an inhuman evil, and it's an evil that wants. So I'm not asking you to lie, Father. Just talk to this boy and tell me if an evil wants him. If not, so be it. I can see my words have affected him deeply, and he sits down in the pews to think. As the last of Mary's colored light fades from the opposite wall, Father Casey turns to me with his response. You're a lot like your mother, you know. You charge headfirst into the darkness. What do you mean? It's a story for another time. He sighs heavily, then says, I will help you. That's great. But I should warn you, since, as you say, you're not an expert. If this is something real, if there is a demonic presence in this boy, it will not take kindly to our intervention. Be prepared for the consequences. Juan is sick again. In the morning, he vomits up his breakfast and runs a low fever. His skin is an unsettling yellow tint as well. I don't know how I'm going to get Father Casey to him, but I'm running out of time to figure it out. Rumors have spread through the holding area about Maria's death, and the other detainees have a new name for the boy. Maldito. When I come to check on them, Alma and Juan huddle in a pile of blankets near the toilet. The other families keep as much distance as they can from them. How are you holding up? I ask Alma. I don't think I can take this anymore. Alma tells me. When I got here, I already felt like no one wanted us. But at least there were others. Now we are unwanted by the unwanted. You won't be unwanted for long, I whisper. That priest I told you about, he's going to come. He's going to help you stay in the US. But this sends her into a deeper despair. You think I'm afraid of La Migra? Well, I thought. Look at my son. She points at Juan. Wrapped in blankets, he stares at the floor. A blue bruise covers his cheek, and his gaze is somewhere only he can see. I'm afraid for his soul. He doesn't eat, he doesn't drink. She drops her voice low. And I don't think he sleeps. That's why they're afraid of him, because of what happened last night. What happened? I'm not sure. Maybe it was a dream I had. Her voice trails off. She's dirty and exhausted, and I don't press further. But as I leave the cell, the other detainees watch me anxiously. I decide to investigate after lunch. As soon as the surveillance tech leaves, I sneak inside the camera control room. I dial in the surveillance footage for the family holding room last night. You can see everything clear as day because we leave the lights on all night. From the aerial view, I see all the detainees have wrapped themselves in thermal blankets like big metallic cocoons. No one stirs. It's when I fast forward that I see him. Juan's dark head bobs back and forth for hours. Then at around 3 a.m, he gets up and tiptoes around the other bodies. Somehow, he doesn't wake anyone up. Until he gets to the door. He bangs his head against it, and again. As he keeps banging, the cocoons shake awake, and terrified detainees emerge from them. But they don't come to help Juan. Instead, they all huddle against the far wall. Why would they do that? What are they afraid of? There's no audio on the tape, so I suspect they heard something that drove this blind fear into them. Alma emerges from the crowd and pulls him away from the door. He pushes back, but she doesn't let up. Eventually, she manages to guide him to the floor, wrap him in a blanket, and spoons him in a tight embrace. I fast forward another couple minutes, and the door suddenly swings open. It's Evan, the night surveillance guy. He pushes Alma away to get Juan. Charging at him, he's about to grab the boy when something happens that I can't explain. It looks like Juan slithers away, like his shiny mylar cocoon slides on the floor in a serpentine pattern. It's possible he's just crawling very quickly, but it looks so unreal. The terrified detainees start climbing up on the bench to get as far away as they can. Finally, Bill grabs Juan off the floor and pulls him out of his blanket. The boy wriggles furiously in his grasp but can't get free, so he starts to chomp at him. This takes Evan by surprise. He's thrown off balance, which allows Juan to sink his teeth deep into his bicep. Evan screams soundlessly. He tackles Juan and then smacks him across the face. Then, Evan retreats out of the room. Anger wells up inside of me, and I have to stop the tape. I want to break that motherfucker's jaw. So I linger around after the end of the shift, waiting for Evan to show up. Nearly everyone from my shift is gone when I finally ask intake if they've seen him. Her face goes dark. "Oh, you didn't hear?" she says. "He's in the hospital." "Shit, what happened?" "He got bit by a diamondback. They're not sure he's gonna make it." With no one on surveillance tonight, I have a shot to sneak in the priest. First, I go into the camera control room and pull the master power, then plug it right back in. Not only does it kill the recording, but it also looks like a power surge, which we get all the time out here. Since there's no one to reset the cameras, we're good for the night. Next, I dress Father Casey in my old uniform. The guard at reception doesn't look twice at him, and he waves us through. While Casey waits in the interview room, I fetch Alma and Juan. She has deep circles under her eyes, and Juan's are bloodshot, with red eyes, yellow skin, and a black marker band across his face. The boy has transformed into someone unrecognizable. The other families are relieved to see them leave. By the time I bring them to the room, Father Casey has changed back into a black shirt and his Roman collar. He gives Alma a deep embrace, and I see her smile for the first time since she's been back. He tries to hug Juan too, but the boy pulls away. With that, I start the video recorder, and so begins our second interview. I'm Father Patrick Casey, parish priest of All Saints in Los Angeles. I've been asked to evaluate the possibility of demonic oppression in 11-year-old Juan Flores, he says to the camera. I angle it down to the ground where Alma sits with Juan against the wall. Father Casey joins them on the floor. The interview continues in Spanish. "How are you feeling, Juan?" He looks up to his mother. She nods for him to answer. "Muy mal," Juan responds, just above a whisper. I turn the audio gain up all the way on the camera to catch his words. Static buzzes in my headphones. "Why bad?" Father Casey asks. "The food is rotten, and they beat me. They are very bad here." This is the most I've heard Juan say since I picked him up. He even turns toward the camera to show his bruise. "I'm so sorry. We're here to help." The priest continues. "No, you're not. He's one of them." Juan looks at me again. "He's trying to help you too. He's a good man." Juan laughs. A deep, throaty laugh that belongs more to a full-grown man than an 11-year-old boy. It puts us on edge. "What's so funny?" the priest asks. "You think he's a good man, pendejo?" Juan snarls. "Yes, I do." "Did he tell you he killed someone?" "No." Juan turns back to the camera, menace in his bloodshot eyes. "Tell him, senor." I stay silent. "Tell him how you found a man in the desert. Tell him how you slashed his water jug. Tell him how he drank his own piss for 5 days. Tell him." The priest turns to me to ask, without judgment, "Did you tell him this?" "No," I say. He turns back to Juan. "How do you know this, mi hijo?" Juan doesn't answer, so the priest directs the question at Alma. In her eyes, I see pain and confusion. "Did you tell him this?" "I didn't know myself," she says. "I see." Father Casey studies Juan, concerned. Sticking his hand down his collar, he takes out a cross hanging around his neck. Juan hisses and pushes against the wall. What's wrong? Father Casey asks him.
Show like the back.
Juan shouts at him. Stop, baby, stop. Alma begs him, but he swats her arm away. He is just speaking gibberish. Alma explains to Father Casey. It's a stupid game, nothing more. It's not gibberish, I'm afraid. He's speaking a dialect of Nahuatl, ancient Aztec, Casey explains. Terror grips Alma's eyes. What's he saying?
Ziluia.
Juan commands the priest. He is telling us to rejoice, because he is the night drinker. Dios mío. Alma swears, crosses herself and starts to pray. Her words aggravate Juan, and he pushes her with tremendous strength. Her body slams on the ground, and Alma starts to weep. Please, she begs Father Casey, get this out of my son. Then she continues her prayers. Juan screams.
Makamo tulatua. Makamo tulatua.
But Alma keeps going. He jumps on his mother and starts to wail on her with his fists. Father Casey pulls him off, and now Juan has a new target. He pushes the priest into the table in front of me. With a loud crunch, Father Casey hits it with such force that it flies at him and knocks the camera over. Señor, nos proteja! Alma yells, which sends Juan into a frenzy. I join the fray and grab him before he can strike his mother again.
Makamo tulatua.
He shouts and turns his fury on me. The next thing that happens is my baptism of fire. It's when everything changed. It's when I started to believe. Juan picks me up, all 165 pounds, and throws me through the air all the way across the room. I hit the opposite wall with a thud. The shock of the attack takes Alma's breath away, and she quits her prayers. And then, as if what happened was a nightmare, Juan's expression suddenly changes. He starts to cry, and Alma takes him in her arms. I know what my boss will say. That Juan knew this language from before. That he was faking his fear of the sacred. And that he heard the story of the man I killed from someone else. His mom or another guard. But there's no way to explain the strength he mustered to attack me. That, Father Casey says, is the irrefutable proof of Juan's possession. Now we pray that I got it on tape. My name is Father Patrick Casey. Dom insisted that he dictate this post to me because he is unable to write it himself. After browsing your discussion board, I understand his need to share his tale. Few who are demonized or possessed believe in the supernatural nature of their oppressor, and even fewer would seek help from the church. So, it is here that the spiritual must congregate and weave their confessions into stories, free of the judgment and ridicule of our materialist world. I have endeavored to transcribe Dom's words as exactly as possible. But you should know this. He is not well. His tortured and at times rambling recollections of the past 3 weeks required my frequent interjections, which I have italicized. Nothing that follows should be taken as my personal or the church's endorsement of the story's veracity. This is Dom's truth, and his alone. We are recording in Dom's studio apartment at night. All the windows, the glass screen door, and the mirror in the bathroom has been broken, and their shards intentionally smashed into smaller pieces, which now litter the floor like sharp gravel. The TV lays face down on the bed next to a mount of broken ceramic from the flower pots. Black gaffer tape covers the shiny metallic handles of the refrigerator and oven. The walls are bare. Framed photos, a broken mirror, and all the dining chairs have been thrown outside into the small backyard, It is very cold. Dom huddles in an empty corner of the room. I should start where I left off. Where did I leave off? I can check for you. Stop. What are you doing? It's just my phone, Dominic. Put it away. Right now. I said no screens. Yes, of course. I'm sorry. Perhaps that's a good place to start. When did you first notice the presence? When I watched the video we made of Juan. You got it on tape? No, the picture was shit. It was all static, the whole thing. The sound was fucked up too. You could barely hear our voices, and I had to turn the volume all the way up to hear what we were saying. Well, except for Juan. He was quiet like the rest of us at first. But when his voice got all deep and different, it was like he was speaking right into the mic. First time I heard it, it was so loud it shook the room. Made me jump. But when I turned off the TV, you know what I saw? I saw him, who you're calling the presence. He was standing behind me and stretched his arm out to touch me. And in his hand was another arm, chopped off from whatever body. I spun around, and he was gone. I was more disturbed than scared. Another hallucination, I thought. And this one I had seen before back at the station. But this time, it was different. When I faced the TV again, he was still there. The arm was closer now, and I could feel his fingers tickle my hair. I ran to the bed, and he still didn't go away. In the reflection of the TV, I could see him walking toward me. All I could do was throw the TV on the floor and trash the tape. Then I spent all night in the car. When the sun came up, and I was still in one piece, I thought maybe he'd leave me alone for a while. So, what happened? I was wrong. The next day, I tried to avoid Alma and Juan, but she requested me by name. In the back of her cell, I could see Juan wrapped in mylar. His eyes were crusted over, his lips were cracked, and his body was pale and bloated. He looked infected, like someone had ripped the little boy's cap off of him, and now we could see what was festering underneath. Somehow, Alma still had hope in her eyes when she asked me how it was going. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell her the truth and kill her hope because it was the only thing keeping her going. So, I lied. I told her soon they would be out of here. Soon I would figure it all out. She was so happy that she stretched her fingers through the chain link and pressed her face against it and smiled and said, "Soon there won't be anything between us." In that moment, that chain link was the only border that existed for me. She looked so beautiful. I needed to cross it. Can you blame me? I was tired of living the nightmare of the truth. I wanted the sweet dream of this lie. So I wrapped my fingers around hers and kissed her through the mesh. Dom's gaze drifts to the ground, and he is silent for a while in memory. I can see his eyelids getting heavy. His head bows down to sleep. Then suddenly, his chin jerks up and his eyes pop open. His shout startles me. "Are you alright, my son?" I'm fine. Just don't let me fall asleep, okay?" "Okay." What was I talking about? You kissed Alma. Oh yeah, right. That's when I was the most delusional, believe it or not. It was like she lit my brain on fire. You know, I actually thought I could figure out a plan B or some other scheme to get them out of there. I don't know how many days I was on that high, but I remember clearly what happened next. November 9th happened. What was November 9th? Don't you read the paper? The president banned asylum for anyone who entered the country illegally. That very same day, the chief ordered me and Steve to process Alma and Juan for deportation. We got to her cell, and I could tell she had been crying all night. Not because of the asylum ban. There was no way she could have known about that. It was because she was living in a cage. But seeing me gave her a burst of energy, and she ran up to greet us. Somos liberados? Are we free? All I could say is see. She hugged me. She even hugged Steve. And then she started shouting in Spanish, all excited like to Juan. He looked worse than the other day. But the ugliest person in the room was Steve. I remember he had this shit-eating grin on his face, like he was proud of us. While Alma helped Juan up, he gave me this pat on the back. Good thinking, he said. Good thinking. It made my skin crawl. Juan, though, could see it through our bullshit. He wouldn't budge, and it made Alma crazy. Vámonos! She yelled at Juan until he finally got up. He looked straight at me and said in perfect English that I was a lying cocksucker. Those exact words. Lying cocksucker. Then he turned to his mom and called her a naive bitch. That's when Steve took out the cuffs and started barking threats at him. But Juan just stared at him. He looked Steve right in the eyes and said something like, "Oh yeah? You're gonna do me like your uncle did you in the upstairs bathroom?" I've never seen Steve go so ballistic. He grabbed Juan by the hair, pulled him up against the wall, and started to choke him. Alma and I tried to pull him off, but Steve's a built motherfucker. I started to yell, "You're gonna kill him, you're gonna kill him." And Steve finally let go. Juan had this coughing fit. At least, that was what I thought it was. But no, he was actually laughing. I tried to say sorry for Steve's behavior, and he just kept on laughing and laughing. "Don't worry about it," he said through his giggles. Then he looked at all of us, and I'll never forget what he said next. He said, "You're all gonna die anyway." How could he know that, Father? He cannot. Steve hasn't been in for weeks. I'm sure Juan and Alma are dead by now too. That just leaves me. We don't know anything for sure. You must keep faith. Whatever possesses Juan knows all of your doubts. It attacks your faith, and you must not let it succeed. Who is attacking me? Don't say who. A demon isn't a man. It is an it, and I'm not sure what demon it is. Great. The language we heard Juan speak is ancient Aztec. That and Juan's national origin suggest a demon of the New World. You mentioned seeing something reflected in your TV. Did it return? Did you get a better look? The next time I saw him, it, was when we took Juan and Alma to the van. She still thought they were being released, so I couldn't bear to look at her. I hung back as Steve put her in the rear of the vehicle. Then it was Juan's turn to get in. He started to push back, so Steve needed my help. I went to open the door, and for a split second, I saw Juan's reflection in the tinted windows. Except, it wasn't Juan. It was the thing I saw before. Can you describe it? It looked old. So old that its head was more like a skull with shriveled yellow skin pulled over it, and its eyes were lidless perfect circles set in a band of black skin, exactly where Juan had drawn it on himself at the hospital. The nose was more like two slits, and he had a mouth with no lips, so you could see the bones of his teeth go all the way up into the skin. Oh yeah, and he had a crown. A crown? I think it was feathers or straw or something thin and sharp like that. Right underneath, I could see a 5-pointed star carved into his forehead. What does that mean? Nothing. You look worried. It's simply, there are hierarchies among these things. Are you sure it was a crown? No, I only saw it for a split second. And it saw me. It smiled even. After that, I don't think it ever left my side. What do you mean? We got in the car and started driving right along the border wall to the Nogales crossing. That's how we do Mexican deportations. We marched them straight across the border to local police. Like I said before, the rear windows of the van have a heavy tint, so Alma didn't know where we were going. Eventually she asked, and this was my mess, so I had to answer. I turned around to tell her they were going to a processing center, which was kinda true. Over the whole time we talked, Juan was staring at me with this demented smile on his face, and I kept looking at him. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his reflection in the tinted window. Juan was too short to see it, so it wasn't him reflected in the window. It was this demon riding along with us, the sharp needles of his crown pressing against the roof of the car. I bolted forward. Now I saw the demon staring at me in the side mirror. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. I went berserk, sweaty, hyperventilating, and screaming at Steve to open the windows. He didn't want to. Something about breaking protocol, so I stretched over and tried to do it myself. Steve swerved and nearly ran us off the road. I didn't care. When he saw I wouldn't give up, he finally rolled down all the windows, and I could push my side mirror away. I didn't feel the hot breath on my neck anymore, so I could breathe again. But then, there was a new problem. Alma could see out a window. Now she knew we were going to Nogales to deport them. When we finally pulled into the Nogales border station, Alma said very little to me. The look on her face was worse than any demonic reflection. It was a look of betrayal, of hate. You ever been to the border? Like the barrier itself? It looks like a brown wall? Is that what you mean? Yeah. I've only seen photos. Well, what you don't see in the photos are the crosses that line the base of the thing, all the way up to the station. Each cross has a name of it of someone who died trying to make the crossing. When Steve and I were walking Alma and Juan to the station, she suddenly stopped and pointed to the crosses. "When you see mine," she said, "I hope it stays on your conscience forever." Then she spit in my face. Steve walked her and Juan the rest of the way by himself. Dom starts to weep. "It's alright, my son. Let it out. I tried to kill myself. When? I took all the sleeping pills I had left. I just wanted some rest, I'm so tired. I took all the pills and laid down on that bed for some rest. It should have killed me. I should have finally had some rest. But something woke me up. It was a loud chant, so loud I could hear the posters on the wall shake. I wanted to turn on the light and see who it was, but my stomach hurt so bad, I ran right into the bathroom and threw everything up. It saved my life. The chant made my head want to explode. Each low grunt knocked against my eardrums as I stumbled back into the main room. But even in the dark, I could tell it was empty, though I felt movements in my periphery. I remember thinking that they were outside the screen door, or near the TV, and my mind was swimming so bad I couldn't even think straight. Should I get my service weapon? Should I turn on a light? That seemed like the best idea, and my fingers finally tripped the switch along the wall. Here's the fucked up thing. The room was totally empty, but it was also completely full. In the dark TV screen, in the glare of the windows and screen door, and even in the fucking flower pot. I saw reflections of strange men. Their skin was painted blue and covered in gang tattoos. Somehow, they knew I could see them and stopped chanting. I didn't know what to think. It was like two worlds were on top of each other. Or maybe I digested too many of those pills, and none of this was real. I moved across the room to get out, when suddenly, all the men dropped to their knees. With their bodies out of the way, I could finally see my own reflection in the glare of the screen door. I wasn't myself. I was the demon. And these men, they were bowing to me. The only thing I could think of was to call you. But when I took out my phone, I saw something reflected in its black screen. On the ceiling, there was a pentagram drawn in blood. Just like in my dreams. Just like in my mom's story. And then, a waterfall of blood rained down on me. No dark surface was safe. I had to destroy them all. At this point, Tom goes silent again. He grabs a fistful of crushed glass off the floor and looks at it in his hand. I notice sweat begin to bead on his pale forehead. I can still see him here. He clenches his fist so tight around the glass that blood trickles between his knuckles. After we spoke, I brought Tom to a psychiatric hospital and took care to explain his fixation on dark reflective surfaces. I cannot say how much of this story is true and how much is fantasy. Before writing this, I read all his previous posts, and it would be easy to dismiss the supernatural as the delusions of a very guilty man. There were no strange reflections in his room that I could see, and there was nothing on the ceiling. But when I found him, he was completely covered in blood. And at the hospital, they said he did not have a scratch on him. The real wound, I am sure, is on his soul.